So a story comes out today. Judge orders Steve Bannon to report to prison on July 1st for contempt of Congress sentence. The former Trump advisor sentenced to 4 months in prison for refusing to comply with January 6th committee subpoenas, but it had been put on hold while he appealed. What do you think about this story?
Well, it's a perfect example of the left punishing its enemies while protecting their friends. And it kind of, right now, there's a debate in the House about whether they're going to find Attorney General Merrick Garland, in contempt for withholding those audio tapes. And they found him in contempt at the committee level, but it's been weeks. There's been no vote. And I think there's been, because I understand it's a close, it's a small majority in the House, but you don't get a majority in the House by being silent about the issues you want that close majority, that small majority to vote on. And it's been silence. And frankly, it was Judicial Watch, our litigation, that forced the Justice Department to admit the transcripts of the audio interviews with Joe Biden were messed with. They didn't reflect what actually he said. And now they're telling us we can't get them because AI might be used to deepfake them. So Bannon's going to jail. Trump's going to jail potentially. And so you've got, they can't manage to impeach Biden. Garland is ignoring brazenly a subpoena, and they can't manage to find him in contempt. And by the way, the House constitutionally has the ability to detain someone who's in contempt of Congress directly. They don't have to rely on the Justice Department to prosecute. So, there's no consequence. And I don't know how much more divergent example could you get. The way that Trump has been treated and Bannon's been treated, Peter Navarro, another Trump aide who's in jail over disputes about executive privilege and contempt for Congress, rushed to be he was prosecuted by the Biden Justice Department. And the House is nominally controlled by Republicans. They haven't figured out a way to impeach Biden, and they have the Attorney General literally coming in under oath saying, "You want to find me in contempt? Go ahead." And they still can't. They still haven't figured out what to do about it.
Tom, how can they do this? Because what's the real reason for this? So Steve Bannon was just ordered to prison for ignoring a congressional subpoena, right? Mm-hmm. But play this clip, Rob. Do you remember this? Go ahead and play this clip the way you had it. So this is Hunter Biden, just gets up and walks out. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Hunter. Apparently you're afraid of my words.
Lower the audio, Rob.
Oh. I like to reclaim my time, Mr. Chairman.
What's the difference?
There isn't any difference. They gave Hunter another chance to respond, and they let that, and he finally caved after a few weeks. But they could have found him in contempt immediately, and they didn't. They didn't.
So what's the difference between what Hunter did versus what Bannon did?
Well, Bannon was relying on the advice of his lawyer. The courts wouldn't give him any benefit of the doubt there. He was raising issues about executive privilege. Typically, that is a significant issue. All of that was just run over by the Biden Justice Department. All of the privileges and protections that presidents and their close advisors typically get are denied Trump. Even when he was president, he wasn't allowed to do things that presidents are supposed to be able to do. Fire people, negotiate with foreign leaders, exercise control over our military. All of that was denied for Trump. And every time Trump tried to assert his constitutional authorities as president, they thought it a reason to attack him and or impeach him. And in the case of Steve Bannon, there's arguments about whether he told what his communications with the president were, whether that was protected or not under the Constitution. And, so to me, that's like a good faith reason not to throw someone in jail for months.
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching this, and you say 4 months. What a perfect amount of time. What's so special about 4 months? What's in 4 months? You got July, August, September, October. Great timing, guys.
Keep one of the most effective voices, one of those outside voices who aren't Republican. keep them off the table for the election season.
And please note that he's given 30 days to report. So he's not being taken straight to prison. He's got 30 days to report. And that is the way it works on white-collar criminals, regardless of whether the rest of the Bannon case is a sham. And it is. And what you have here on Hunter Biden, I read a legal analysis that said that the reason the Republicans have next to no balls on a Hunter Biden case, Pat, is if they went all the way to the wall, they need a couple Dems to kind of go with them. And if they go all the way to the wall, you're just going to put the president in a position that he pardons him. Because that's it. Do you think Hunter Biden's going to do time? If he was actually convicted, Pat, and he's getting ready to be sentenced, what do you think Biden does? He picks up his pen and he pardons him. That's it. He's not going to let Hunter go to prison. And there's this gilding weak response on the Republican side to push this. And now we're finally in court with the gun charge. But that was contempt of Congress. You're subpoenaed to come before Congress in a hearing, and you and your lawyers have said, okay, we showed up, we were here, but we've had enough of this crap, we're just leaving. That's ridiculous. Well, you're in contempt at that moment.
And it highlights the way these issues are usually resolved through negotiations, and Hunter eventually showed up. It's amazing that Democrats can figure out a way to resolve through negotiations Bannon's testimony. Obviously, they could have figured out a way to get him to testify. And, he could have asserted certain privileges and there would have been fights about it. But it was a setup. It was a setup. This was a political prosecution. I tell you something. There's not a darn thing this Justice Department does in terms of prosecuting any politically sensitive case that should be trusted. It's my position. Every January 6th defendant, every single one, should be pardoned or commuted, have their sentences commuted. Every prosecution of every politician by the Justice Department, we should presume, is political in a way you can't trust it. Senator Menendez, I have sympathy for. Even Hunter, I have sympathy for. I mean, you could run an argument that Hunter's being thrown under bus by the Biden Justice Department. They're doing these de minimis investigations, prosecutions. He could result in jail time, maybe, maybe not, all to protect Joe. And so there's nothing honest this Justice Department leadership does. And it's been compromised, and they don't deserve the benefit of the doubt.
I agree with you. And on Menendez, you bring up something very, very interesting. I have always felt that Menendez, what they wanted to get him to is resign so that they could get somebody else appointed to a seat. That was my gut. Why? And I never thought that they actually wanted to put him on trial and create the precedent. Because think about it, if you prosecute successfully Menendez for all the things that he's been accused of, do you know what happens? You now have case law precedent that's going to apply to 537 other people in Washington that do the same thing before lunch every day.
Well, and this is not
accepting gifts and doing all of that. Yeah. It's the same thing. Putting the gifts in the name of your kids or in the wife's trust or then trading on the information. The same thing happens before lunch every day with everybody else there. And Menendez was particularly flamboyant on it and had a little bit of a big mouth and was a bit of an ass with his staff. And so enough people percolated up that this ended up in plain sight and they did something with it. But overall, the same thing. I don't think they wanted, I didn't think they wanted the precedent of this, Tom, because that precedent would kind of hang like a sword of Damocles over the heads of everybody else. But here we are.
I'm not saying Menendez is an innocent man. I'm just saying the Justice Department can't be trusted to fairly prosecute him. I just don't trust the Justice Department.
I agree with that as well.
If I were the president coming in, I'd have a clean team look at all these political prosecutions in the least, especially for folks like Menendez, where there might be some evident guilt or criminality. But, who knows? Maybe they've denied him access to all the information he deserved as a defendant in the case. This Justice Department, as a matter of course, engages in unethical conduct time and time again. I mean, just look how Trump's been treated. Just look how Trump's been treated. Why would we presume they're treating people with less power any better?
No, by the way, I think Menendez has some guilt. But my point is, I don't think what he's doing is any different from what the vast majority of the rest members of Congress are doing.
Well, if he did what they say he did, I pray that not everyone's putting gold bars in their closet or wherever the heck.
Well, I'll use the gold bar as a metaphor, but are there gifts from foreign lobbyists that aren't gold bars but are basically of the same value? Yeah, come on.
Well, certainly Joe Biden is Senator Menendez, and he's a version of Menendez sitting there in the Oval Office, given all the evidence we have as to what he and his family was up to. Through
11 LLCs and sequential family gifts.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.